Beer. Beer is one of the oldest alcoholic drinks in the world, the most widely consumed, and the third most popular drink after water and tea. Beer is produced by the brewing and fermentation of starches from cereal grains, most commonly malted barley. Although wheat, maize, or corn, rice, and oats are also used, the fermentation of the starch sugars in the wort produces ethanol and carbonation in the beer. Most modern beer is brewed with hops, which add bitterness and other flavors, and act as a natural preservative and stabilizing agent. Other flavoring agents, such as root, herbs, or fruits, may be included or used instead of hops. In commercial brewing, natural carbonation is often replaced with forced carbonation. Some of the earliest writings refer to the production and distribution of beer. The Code of Hammurabi included laws relating to it, and the hymn to Ninkasi, a prayer to the Mesopotamian goddess of beer, a recipe for it. Beer is distributed in bottles and cans, and is also commonly available on draft, particularly in pubs and bars. The brewing industry is a global business consisting of several dominant multinational companies and many thousands of smaller producers, ranging from brew pubs to regional breweries. The strength of modern beer is usually around 4% to 6% alcohol by volume (ABV). Beer forms part of the culture of many nations and is associated with social traditions such as beer festivals, as well as activities like pub crawling, pub quizzes, and pub games. The process of making beer is known as brewing. A dedicated building for the making of beer is called a brewery, though beer can be made at home and has been for much of its history, in which case the brewing location is often called a brew house. A company that makes beer is called either a brewery or a brewing company. Beer made on a domestic scale for non-commercial reasons is today usually classified as home brewing, regardless of where it is made. Though most home-brewed beer is made at home, historically, domestic beer was what's called farmhouse ale. Brewing beer has been subject to legislation and taxation for millennia, and from the late 19th century on, taxation largely restricted brewing to commercial operations only in the UK. However, the UK government relaxed legislation in 1963, followed by Australia in 1972 and the US in 1978, though individual states were allowed to pass their own laws. limiting production, allowing home brewing to become a popular hobby. The purpose of brewing is to convert the starch sauce into a sugary liquid called wort, and to convert the wort into the alcoholic drink known as beer, in a fermentation process affected by yeast. The first step, where the wort is prepared by mixing the starch sauce, normally malted barley, with hot water, is known as mashing. Hot water, known as liquor in brewing terms, is mixed with crushed malt or malts, known as grist, in a mash tun. The mashing process takes around 1 to 2 hours, during which the starches are converted to sugars, and then sweet wort is drained off the grains. The grains are then washed in a process known as spatching. This washing allows the brewer to gather as much of the fermentable liquid from the grains as possible. The process of filtering the spent grain from the wort and spatch water is called wort separation. The traditional process for wort separation is lautering, in which the grain bed itself serves as the filter medium. Some modern breweries prefer the use of filter frames, which allow for a more finely ground grist. Most modern breweries use a continuous spatch, collecting the original wort and the spatch water together. However, it is possible to collect a second or even third wash with the not quite spent grains as separate batches. Each run would produce a weaker wort and thus a weaker beer. This process is known as the second and third runnings. Brewing with several runnings is called party gale brewing. The sweet wort collected from spatching is put into a kettle or copper, so called because these vessels were traditionally made from copper, and boiled, usually for about 1 hour. During boiling, the water in the wort evaporates, but the sugars and other components of the wort remain. This allows more efficient use of the starch sauces in the beer. Boiling also destroys any remaining enzymes left over from the mashing stage. Hops are added during boiling as a source of bitterness flavor. Hops may be added at more than one point during the boil. The longer the hops are boiled, the more bitterness they contribute, but the less hop flavor and aroma remain in the beer. After boiling, the hopped wort is cooled and ready for the yeast. In some breweries, the hopped wort may pass through a hop bag, which is a small vat filled with hops to add aromatic hop flavoring and to act as a filter, but usually the hot wort is simply cooled for fermentation. For the fermenter, where the yeast is added. During fermentation, the wort becomes beer in a process that takes a week to several months, depending on the type of yeast and the strength of the beer. In addition to producing ethanol, fine particulate matter suspended in the wort settles during fermentation. Once fermentation is complete, the yeast also settles, leaving the beer clear. During fermentation, most of the carbon dioxide is allowed to escape from a trap, and the beer is left with carbonation of only about 1 atmosphere of pressure. The carbonation is often increased either by transferring the beer to a pressure vessel, such as a keg. A keg is a small cask. Wooden kegs made by a copper were used to transport nails, gunpowder, and a variety of liquids. Normally constructed of stainless steel. Although aluminium can be used if it is coated with plastic on the inside, it is commonly used to store, transport, and serve beer. Other alcoholic or non-alcoholic drinks, carbonated or non-carbonated, may be housed in the keg as well. Carbonated drinks are generally kept under pressure in order to maintain carbon dioxide in solution, preventing the beverage from becoming flat. Carbonation is often increased either by transferring the beer to a pressure vessel, such as a keg, and introducing pressurized carbon dioxide, or by transferring it before the fermentation is finished, so that carbon dioxide pressure builds up inside the container as the fermentation finishes. Sometimes the beer is put unfiltered, so it still contains yeast, into bottles with some added sugar, which then produces the desired amount of carbon dioxide inside the bottle. Fermentation is sometimes carried out in 2 stages, primary and secondary. Once most of the alcohol has been produced during primary fermentation, the beer is transferred to a new vessel and allowed a period of secondary fermentation. A secondary fermentation is used when the beer requires long storage before packaging or greater clarity. When the beer has fermented, it is packaged either into casks or for cask ale, or kegs, aluminum cans, or bottles for other sorts of beer.